What do you know about consulting? Maybe you know someone who's gone to work at a big corporate-sounding acronym like
EY, PwC, BCG, KPMG,
SNOOP to the DOGG, Snoop Dizzle, or a family name like McKinsey or Bain.
If you're anything like me, you probably didn't know how many genuinely world-changing people started their careers in consulting.
Like musician / actor / former BCG management consultant, John Legend.
You don't sound massively enthused by it. Were you at the time?
It was very sexy work.
You know, the EGOT's all very well and good, but I believe you're known as king of the Excel spreadsheet. I don't know if I was king, but I was pretty good at it.
Consultants can become presidents. They can become almost presidents. They're CEOs of companies like Google, Pepsi, lots of big companies. You've probably heard about them in the news, possibly in a less than favourable light. And perhaps you've seen the one decent film about consulting that I could find, Up in the Air. Let me know if there's any more in the comments, please. But one thing's for sure, consultancies are everywhere. They have fingers in so many pies. Pies like the NHS, French government, big banks. If you got made redundant, or perhaps you got a pay rise, it could have been a consultant who made that decision.
So what does a consultant actually do? What's it like to be a consultant?
In this video, I'm going to talk about salaries, I'm going to talk work, culture, exit opportunities to give you a sense of what a career in consulting looks like. Let's do it. In order to prep for this video, I conducted my own research, but I also spoke to several people who worked at a number of different consulting firms in MBB, the Big Four, and boutique consultancies. But in order to get a truly honest idea of what working in a consultancy looks like, I wanted to talk to people who had left the industry so I could get unbiased opinions, the stuff that consulting vloggers probably won't tell you. So I interviewed on the phone a former Big Four employee. Hello.
Hiya. How are you doing?
And my friend who quit management consultancy to pursue a career in filmmaking. Incidentally, he lives on a gorgeous houseboat. The stereotype of a consultant is that all you do is make PowerPoint presentations. And that's definitely true. There's a lot of PowerPoint. Presenting your ideas to clients and stakeholders is a big part of the job. But there is a little bit more to it than that. I've heard several descriptions of what a consultant does. What is consulting?
Oh my God.
What actually do you do as a
$1 million
management
question. I'll give you like the favourable description of it is, and the unfavourable. The favourable description of consultancy would be that a client or a company has a problem, and your problem might be that you're spending too much money in this space, you're struggling to hold on to top talent, or that you're being outcompeted by a new entrant to the market. The management consultants will have a rummage around that company, try and get their head around the problem by virtue of the experience they have on similar clients or other projects or an expertise that they've developed in that particular area. They will come up with a solution for the client. They will pass it over to the client and say, this is how you resolve your problem.
In essence, a consultant is there to provide an outside perspective, fresh and unbiased expertise and advice to help a business, an organization, or an industry. Consultants are brought in to help clients solve problems, improve performance, efficiency, productivity, and achieve their goals. Consultants work on a project-by-project basis, and projects can vary significantly in length from just a few weeks all the way through to a few months or even years, depending on the scope and the complexity of the work that needs doing. Let's take an example. Imagine there's an electric car manufacturer, Evroom, and they're having difficulty retaining high-level staff. All of the bosses are quitting, so they decide to hire my consultancy, KPMCW. There's a few stages that projects can be broken down into, from analysis and strategy development through to implementation and evaluation. Let's start with analysis. KPMCW begins by looking at Evroom's current talent management practices to identify the root causes of the retention problem, to try and identify why are people leaving. This would involve looking at factors such as hiring, training, compensation, and career development opportunities. As part of this process, they would gather information and research through conducting surveys, interviews, focus groups, as well as providing analysis on existing data and understanding market trends. This information is then used to benchmark the company's practices against industry best practices. Basically, what are they doing relative to all of their competitors? Then they use this to identify areas for improvement. Next up, strategy. Based on the findings of the analysis, KPMCW develops a comprehensive retention strategy that targets the root causes of the problem and includes the recommendations for improving the company's talent management practices. This strategy would be tailored specifically for Everoom's needs and would include clear goals, timelines, and metrics for success. Implementation. Once the strategy is developed, KPMG WCW would work with Everoom's leadership teams to implement it. This would involve communicating the strategy to employees, making necessary changes to the talent management practices, and monitoring the progress against the goals and metrics that were established back in the strategy stage. Finally, evaluation. KPMG WCW would continuously review and refine the retention strategy based on feedback from the employees and other stakeholders. This would involve evaluating the effectiveness of the strategy against the established goals and metrics and making adjustments as they're needed to ensure that Everoom is retaining its high-level staff. The problem of losing the bosses is solved. Tick. By KPMG WCW. This is a version of the process as a whole, but different firms focus in on different parts of this process. For example, the big strategy houses like Bain focus mostly on strategy, while consultancies like, for example, Accenture lean more towards implementation. However, in recent years, firms have diversified what they focus on. For example, strategy houses are doing more implementation and vice versa. The specific tasks and responsibilities of a consultant can vary widely depending on their industry, the field, the type of project they're working on. And to detail them out in this video would be insanely boring and no one would watch it. But they include things like IT operations, management consultation. You might be an expert in environmental consultation, helping businesses reduce their carbon footprint. Basically, if there's an area of business that you're interested in, there's probably a consultancy working in it. I asked my interviewees what their day-to-day responsibilities look like.
You are making lots and lots of presentations. You might also be conducting workshops, which is, that's probably the most interesting and creative bit, I suppose, trying to resolve problems. You have to really nurture relationships with clients.
I did a particular kind of work over and over again, which was working with a private equity house and reviewing their future portfolio companies, like ones that they wanted to acquire across all these environmental social governance criteria. So that would involve doing interviews with the private equity acquisition team, writing up a report saying you could do this better, this is a risk, this is an opportunity. There are emissions and waste and all that stuff, environment factors, but social factors like gender equality, modern slavery.
That was the favourable or relatively favourable view of what a consultant does. The unfavourable view of consulting asks, what do they actually deliver?
They come in, poke around your business. You should do this, you should do that, you should do the other, but have absolutely no obligation to help you deliver it. So they give you a piece of paper, say that's what you should do, and then they clear off and charge you £1 million.
With no certainty as to whether any of it will be implemented, and to be honest, whether any of it could even be implemented. Consultancies send in consultants under the guise that they are experts. Now, the unfavourable view would suggest that these experts that they are sending in are really just generalists.
I suppose in a lot of consultancy, the idea behind it is that you're getting expertise in theory. And actually, so much of it is fudge. Basically, the more senior you are, the better you are at sounding like you know what you're talking about. And I always was I hope some people know what they're talking about.
Another criticism that is levelled against consultancies is they are just a way of management passing the buck and the responsibility for doing dirty work, as this article suggests. That escape from accountability is one of the most valuable services that management consultancies provide. Bosses have certain goals, but don't want to be blamed for doing what's necessary to achieve those goals. By hiring consultants, management can say that they were just following independent expert advice. So, where does the truth lie? As a consultant, are you doing something good or something bad? To be honest, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, and this can probably vary from company to company or even from project to project. The consultancy industry typically uses a tiered structure to differentiate between different firms based on their size, their reputation, and their market position. At the top, you have Tier 1. These are the most well-established consulting firms. They are the tip top, the gold standard in the industry. They are called MBB, which stands for McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, and Bain. These firms offer a broad range of consulting services but focus mostly on high-level strategy. These firms have a global presence, they're multinational, and their clients often include large corporations, governments, and other high-profile clients. There's no doubt about it, if you work at Tier 1, you're going to have access to amazing resources and exit opportunities. A person I spoke to who worked at an MBB firm said they were surrounded by the smartest people in the world. Tier 2 firms have a strong reputation and also a significant market share. Examples of Tier 2 firms include Roland Berger, Oliver Wyman, or Big Four firms focusing on strategy. These firms offer a similar range of services to Tier 1, but with a slightly smaller scope and scale. Now, it'd be wrong to think of Tier 2 firms as being in some way worse than Tier 1 firms, particularly because in certain countries and industries, they can be directly competing against Tier 1 firms. But Tier 2 firms often focus on specific industries or functions, for example, healthcare or supply chain management. Tier 3 are sometimes called implementation consultancies. If you work in implementation, you tend to be engaged with clients for longer durations, typically between 4 and 8 months. This tier includes consultancies that work with specific or niche industries. They can be regional and tend to have smaller clients. Interestingly, a lot of these firms have been set up by ex-partners of Tier 1 and Tier 2 firms who love the work but want a better work-life balance. Boutique firms are smaller consulting firms that specialize in particular industries, functions, or service offerings. Boutique firms typically have fewer than 100 employees and offer highly specialized expertise. Now, if you are coming out of university as an undergraduate, you'll usually start as a business analyst, a junior consultant, or a junior associate. The name depends on the company that you work for. Then your expected career progression can be shown in this brilliant graphic by acknowledge.co.uk. I acknowledge you, acknowledge.co.uk. And this is part of a wider article that's brilliant. If you're interested in consulting, definitely give it a read. Generally, you can expect a pay rise about once every year or a year and a half, and a promotion roughly every 2 years. At certain consultancy firms, the people at the top, the partners and upper management, are often seen to be there not necessarily because they are the best, but simply because they've spent the most time in the company. It's a bit of a battle of attrition. And I came across this with a couple of people that they were quite frustrated by that and actually left the industry as a result of it, because they felt like even if they were the most talented and they worked the most hard, they wouldn't rise up the ranks any faster.
I don't know whether this goes for all management consultancies, but they've done 25 years, they've done 23 years. And some of them were smart and talented, no doubt. Some of them were not. It felt like the position of seniority that they had was really just because they literally held on for dear life and stuck it out.
Let's talk money. In the UK, if you've just come out of university to become a business analyst or junior consultant, you can expect to start out at around £32,133 a year, but there is a decent amount of range in your potential salary. And if you're lucky enough to get a job at one of the Tier 1 MBB firms, you could be looking at between £40,000 and £45,000 a year, with a potential bonus of 0 or £6,000 a year. If you have an MBA, a PhD, or 7 years experience, that number jumps up significantly. And for example, at an MBB firm, you can be looking at around £80,000 a year with a 10% increase every year. So not bad. But if you live in the US, lucky you, because the base salary is significantly higher, $63,164 a year on average, plus around $18,000 in additional compensation. This can be bonuses, it could be shares. Now, if you're at an MBB firm in the US, you can expect to start out at an average base salary of $107,000 a year and a total average salary of $125,000 a year when you take into account stocks and shares, bonuses, that sort of thing. And if you're in the US, you're an MBB firm and you have an MBA, you can expect to start out at $190,000 a year. That is so much money, it boggles my mind. In the description below, there's a good resource explaining things about money in consulting, so do have a look at that. Some people go into consulting because they see it as a city job that has a relatively good work-life balance compared to something like investment banking or being a corporate lawyer. As a consultant, you very rarely have to work weekends. And if you're on holiday, you're not on a project, you can literally just switch your phone off, your boss won't bother you, and you can properly turn your brain off, which is a game changer and really, really good for a city job. Also, if you're at work but not on a project, hours can be fairly relaxed. sort of a normal 9 to 5 type thing. But consultancy.co.uk provides some depressing ways to deal with your work-life balance, like accept the situation and find happiness in the little things. Now, why is that? Well, 77% of consultants working the top of the market say that they work over contracted hours. And surprise, surprise, juniors tend to work longer hours. Now, this is when the tiers come back in. If you work in tier 1, you can expect to work a savage amount. I'm talking 60 to 80 hours a week. Now, for reference, that could mean up to 16 hours a day, which is from 8 a.m. in the morning all the way through to 12 p.m. Yuck. If you work in tier 2, you can still expect your work-life balance to be challenging, though slightly better than tier 1. You'll usually work on longer projects, but you'll have a little bit more free time. We're talking between 55 and 70 hours a week, which is a long week again. That is very long. If you're working at an implementation firm, you can expect to be closer to a 9 to 5 job. Normally you'll work between 45 and 50 hours a week, peaking around 65 hours a week, depending on phase and commitment deadlines.
Some managers cared. They would be like, make sure that you go home at a reasonable time. Then there were others who'd be really like cracking the whip and like expect you to be working on the weekend. Oh, but then it's a competitive environment as well. And you're being like marked against your peers. You are the only person that knows how much you can tolerate.
There is a stereotype that exists of the kind of people that consulting firms are looking to hire. They are called insecure overachievers. I'm not saying that this is a fair label, but the logic goes that consultants are perceived to be driven by a deep-seated sense of insecurity that compels them to overcompensate by achieving extraordinary success. This manifests in a variety of ways, such as working excessively long hours, striving to meet or exceed client expectations, and constantly seeking praise and approval and recognition for their work. Consulting firms are regularly right at the top of the Times top 100 graduate employers. So what's the allure? Why do people choose consulting?
I think it's pretty good for a graduate who's sort of uncertain about what you want to do. It's an institutional career. I think a lot of people, when they come out of university, it's a very uncertain time. And bearing in mind, you've just come out of like back-to-back institutions throughout your whole life, high school, senior school, university, an institutional first delve into the career world is to some extent like a reassuringly safe environment.
Interestingly enough, a lot of the furniture used in consultancies is the same as the furniture they use at university libraries. Let the bubble continue. The main reason a lot of people go into consulting is that it gives you brilliant grounding, business experience, and confidence to set you up for the rest of your career. If you're coming out of uni, you don't really know what you want, but you're business-minded and you're drawn to the corporate sector, then consulting is a great place to start. If you have plans to set up your own business, but you need a network and business experience, consulting is a great place to start. Basically, as a consultant, you're exposed to diverse industries, clients, and working practices, some of which are innovative and at the cutting edge of business. On a personal level, this is great for people who enjoy learning and problem solving of many kinds. Also, the knowledge that you acquire from a variety of different industries gives you the opportunity to spot gaps in the market that you can exploit. I see consulting as perfect for someone who is naturally entrepreneurial, but hasn't yet had that killer business idea that they want to pursue. Consulting also provides a breeding ground of exit opportunities for moving into different jobs. Imagine, if you will, that you get put on a project in an industry that you suddenly realize that you love. It's perfect for you. Now, the time that you spend working with the clients in that industry allows you to build contacts and establish a reputation, making finding a job in that industry smooth sailing. Consulting firms invest heavily in training and development programs to help their consultants build new skills and knowledge. Stuff like project management, strategic thinking, and communication, all of which are easily transferable to other industries or roles.
There were such simple things, and never underestimate the power of how to write a good email. Writing a business plan, writing statements of work, what are the roles that people occupy within a big corporate and conglomerate. Who do I need to work with? Who do I need to target? What are their pain points and passion points? What are they trying to achieve, and how does what I do now help them achieve that?
On the whole, ex-consultants are seen as highly employable, particularly if you're working at a recognizable name. That will open the doors to a lot of companies. That brand recognition and prestige goes a long way. Working in consulting is often seen as the lesser of evils for the corporate world and working in the city. Salaries are high, but relative to something like banking hours are relatively short. There's a funny thing about consulting that if you talk to someone about it or you research it, they'll start talking about exit opportunities very quickly. And this speaks to something which is, it's really rare for someone to become a career consultant. There's a 2019 article by eFinancial Careers that notes that a mind-boggling 43% of people at BCG have been at the company for fewer than 2 years, while at Deloitte it was 34% and 28% at PwC. Why is this?
I think a lot of people see it as a stepping stone, no doubt. Pretty sure of the people that I went in with, maybe there's 15 of us, 1 or 2 of them are still management consultants. A lot of people that I knew were looking for something more tangible, maybe looking for something with a structure where they could see more career progression for themselves, looking for something maybe faster paced, something more hands-on.
For many people, consulting is just a stepping stone to the rest of their career. You'll have great exit opportunities, and at somewhere like BCG, you'll have amazing exit opportunities, which might explain a part of why so many people leave.
If you're doing a really good job for your client, the client can often look at it and go, well, that's the perfect fit for our business. See, what they try to do is like contractually prevent that, but it seemed to happen still, and happened at scale, really.
Now, some companies have non-compete agreements, but sometimes it can be in the best interests of the consultancy to allow employees to go to their clients' firms, because then they have someone on the inside who they know is good and they've worked with before to strengthen ties between them and their clients. A little bit like like a French prince marrying a Spanish princess to create better union amongst the countries. It's a bit of a tenuous metaphor, but I've gone for it. Another reason a lot of people leave after 2 years is that the jobs can be really, really stressful and very full on. It's hard work, and for a lot of people, that's unsustainable. Literally everyone that I spoke to as part of this process either suffered from ill mental health or came away from their time in consulting with a serious health problem, which is pretty depressing when you think about it. Do with that what you will. I find it mad that a lot of these graduate schemes at consulting firms basically rely on the fact that you have all of these people willing to just run a 2-year gauntlet where they know they're going to have a really shit time because they know at the end of it they're going to get these great exit opportunities. To me, as a business, that doesn't seem sustainable. And if it is sustainable, it's only sustainable in virtue of the fact that there's lots of businesses around them that have fair work practices where people don't get burnt out, don't get super stressed. A quick note about career consultants. I just want to read out a transcript from one of the interviews that I did, talking to someone about what career consultants at MBB firms are like. They are particular kinds of psychos. They're like, I fucking love this, but they have zero humanity. They have totally lost their ability to be humane because they are so busy. Consultants often travel extensively as part of their job, but this depends on the type of consulting they do, the clients they work with, and whether or not they're on a project. This travel will usually be to clients' offices. Often it's to keep a really close working relationship with the clients, but also you can make them feel looked after. That way they're far more likely to recommend you onward or to give repeat business in the future. The classic work week for a consultant, if you're on a project, is that you fly out to a client's office very early on Monday morning, potentially 5:30 a.m. early, and you work with the clients from Monday to Thursday, and then you fly back Thursday evening. Fridays are often a bit more relaxed, and sometimes you can work from home or finish a little bit earlier. So there are pros and cons to this travel. On the plus side, if you're a junior consultant, you're probably spending much of your work week out of the house, you're getting dinner paid for you, and you're living in a hotel. So in essence, you'll be saving a lot more money. Also, junior consultants can often rent a room in a kind of crappy apartment because they know they're going to be spending most of the week in a nice hotel. Now, a lot of people hear travel and think, oh, that's super sexy and exciting and fun. But depending on the project and the industry that you're working in, you can end up in some pretty depressing places.
You're on the train to Telford again.
Right.
Oh, great. Another 4 days in Telford. I'm sure Telford's great. I've never been, but it was a bit of a standing joke. Whatever, I don't think that's a perk.
From what I've heard in my interviews, the travel can quickly become tedious, and the allure of the fancy plush hotels is quickly replaced by loneliness and an unsatisfying social life. Bleak. The overall effect of COVID has been to reduce the amount of travel, but having spoken to people in the industry, I gather that the travel is coming back. So what kind of perks can you expect? If you work at one of the bigger international firms, you can expect to travel to some pretty interesting places. Some of the places people mentioned they'd worked were Uganda, Dubai, Australia, which is pretty cool if you're an adventurous person. Like any other good corporate job, you can expect things like bonuses, health insurance if you're in the States, retirement plans, paid time off, maternity leave. I spoke to a number of people who were unwell when they worked at large consultancies, and they said that they were really well looked after. They were allowed to work at reduced capacity or not at all, and they were still paid. Unanimously, they said if something goes wrong working at a big corporate company like that, they do look after you. You get lots of free lunches and expense dinners at work if you're working late, but notice that is quite a good way of making people work late, so that might actually be a negative disguised as a perk. Pre-pandemic, consulting was full of lots of big team events like training sessions and fancy dinners or company bonding days, often abroad, sort of lush, glamorous type things. But in the last 5 years, these have been scaled down a lot for a number of reasons, due to public scrutiny, economic resiliency, and also a change in attitude and people feeling like the world just doesn't really work like that anymore. Like most industries, the pandemic has had a big effect on consulting. There's much more working from home, so people are having to pay for their own meals. In order to make the most of the free meals at work, analysts have moved closer to the job and are coming into the office more often. But often these consultancies are in quite built up areas where rental prices are high. As mentioned before, the pandemic has massively reduced the amount of travel within the industry, but also in terms of training. So the way it used to work before the pandemic is that you'd arrive at one of these big consulting firms and you'd go on a big training week away. If you're lucky, it'd be somewhere sunny like Portugal, and you meet a bunch of your new colleagues who are all in the same position as you, and you'd build your networks, you'd make friends, you'd share war stories. But now, since the pandemic, much of that training is happening online, so the offering has gotten much worse. It's hurting people's networks, and it's also making the job just generally less fun. I gather generally that travel is coming back, but lots of that training is still happening online because the companies have realized they can do it effectively for much cheaper. Just quickly before I conclude, let me know if there's anything in the comments I've missed, and also please subscribe because I'm going to be following up with more content on consulting. Right, would I be a consultant? I don't have a really clear answer to this question, but here are some things that have potentially informed my view. Every person that I spoke to in preparation for this video said the job was incredibly stressful and that the hours are very long. However, none of them said they regretted going into consultancy, and they said that it set them up for the rest of their career really well. When I'm not doing this, I'm a filmmaker and photographer, and I actually have a couple of colleagues who are ex-consultants, and there's a few things that they are really, really good at. They have a wonderful ability to run a project. They can set really clear goals and hit them. They're also incredibly good at communicating with clients, and generally their soft skills are amazing. They write really good emails. They're very punctual. They're just generally very good and efficient employees. Honestly, going into this research, I thought that I really wouldn't want to be a consultant. It sounded like a really boring corporate job that I just wanted nothing to do with. But I think there are two sets of circumstances in which I would want to be a consultant. The first is if I was coming out of university and I really had no idea what I wanted to do. Basically, what it does is it opens opportunities up for you. And if you have no idea what you want to do, opportunities and exposure are exactly what you need. The second circumstance is if I had already worked in a career that I felt wasn't for me, and I was looking once again to broaden my horizons. It basically gives you the opportunity to reskill and to crack open the business world for yourself. So under those circumstances, I would work as a consultant. However, and this is my opinion, but I personally would rather go to a boutique firm or an implementation firm over a strategy firm or a tier 1, tier 2 type firm. The reason being that I think the stress associated with working at those places and the crazy hours, 60 to 80 hours a week, that is mind-bogglingly bogglesome. I just don't want to go anywhere near that. The opportunity cost, I think, associated with going to somewhere like that where you're working really, really long hours is it becomes much harder to maintain social relationships in your life. It's much harder to have hobbies and other interests in your life. I personally would rather be a well-rounded person than having a supercharged career where I'm getting paid loads, but I don't have any time for myself. But that's a personal choice. Thanks for watching the video, and please do subscribe. I'm going to be making lots of content, all to do with the experiences of working in different jobs. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.